This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 1 hour, 8 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Back at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, viewing the Falcon 9 rocket, topped with the Dragon capsule. The vehicle is 157 feet tall, 12 feet in diameter. Its 9 first-stage Merlin engines will generate 855,000 pounds of thrust at liftoff this morning, rising to nearly 1 million pounds of thrust as it climbs up through the atmosphere. The Falcon rocket is named for the Millennium Falcon in the Star Wars movies. The number 9 refers to the 9 Merlin engines that power Falcon 9's first stage. Meanwhile, the Dragon spacecraft is 14.4 feet tall and 12 feet in diameter. Its trunk is 9.2 feet tall. And with the solar arrays fully extended, it measures 54 feet wide. And as we mentioned earlier, although this is a cargo resupply mission, Dragon was designed to carry crew, and SpaceX is working toward that goal. The Dragon was named for the fictional Puff the Magic Dragon after critics in 2002 deemed SpaceX's goals fantastical. But here we are today after a successful operational mission in October. This will be the second of 12 planned as part of the commercial resupply services contract that SpaceX has with NASA. After liftoff at 10:10 and 13 seconds a.m., the first stage engine will burn for about 3 minutes. The spacecraft will separate, and the single engine second stage will burn, taking the spacecraft to its orbit, after which the solar arrays will deploy, and there will be a carefully choreographed series of thruster firings that will take the spacecraft to the International Space Station, where 6 crew members of Expedition 34 await its arrival tomorrow, Saturday. NASA television will begin coverage of Grapple at 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time for an expected Grapple at 6:30 a.m. All systems remain go. Weather is green, and at T-minus 1 hour, 6 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. This is Falcon Launch Control. This is Falcon Launch Control at T-minus 1 hour, 1 minute, 40 seconds and counting. And we're about 90 seconds away from a weather briefing by Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan from the 45th Weather Squadron here at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. He'll be briefing the SpaceX launch team on the current conditions and the forecast for the remainder of the count. That will be at T-minus 60 minutes, exactly 1 hour from launch. And the next milestone after that, at about T-minus 40 minutes, we'll begin final vehicle configuration for launch. So once again, we'll stand by to listen to a weather briefing from Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan. This is Falcon Launch Control.
This is the LWO with the L-minus 1 hour range weather briefing. On your video display, you should have an enhanced infrared picture. This is also set up with a special enhancement to depict the cloud tops at 0 degrees Celsius at green, minus 10 degrees Celsius in orange, and minus 20 degrees Celsius in red. Anything showing up in green shows cloud tops that are in the threat range for triggered lightning if those clouds were indeed 4,500 foot thick. It also shows the corridor of travel for those clouds and timing at 3 hours, 2 hours, and 1 hour arcs. We are 1 hour out, so inside that 1 hour arc, you can see quite a bit of clear air or clouds lower than 0 degrees Celsius tops, and just some scattered conditions of 0 degrees Celsius tops, of which are less than 4,500 foot thick. Zooming in a little closer, you can see on visible just that very thin, in-depth clouds moving over spaceport at this time. A little bit thicker clouds to the south associated with the jet stream, but all that is translating to the south, and we're looking pretty good for launch. Looking at the winds at the launch pad, currently at 10 knots with peaks to around 12 to 14, and that's expected to continue throughout the count and be a similar range for T0. Looking at upper level winds for the last 6 hours or so, you can see progressively weaker winds in the low levels, indicating with less than 30 knots earlier on in the count, and now down to 10 to 15 knots as we're seeing on the towers. But you can see an increase in wind speeds through time at the mid-levels between 10 and 15,000 feet, also between 25 and 30,000 feet, and above the peak winds of 125 knots between 40 and 50,000 feet. And we do expect that trend to continue, as indicated on our AMU upper-level wind tool. Using the model forecast from lighter color to darker color, you can see the model has forecast that trend to continue to increase in those levels between 30 and 40, and also between 40 and 50,000 feet through the window. Moving to our operations forecast today, we are still looking at few clouds at 4,000 feet and 14,000 feet. Good visibility. Winds will remain out of the northwest at 10 with peaks to around 15 knots, and we've gone with an overall probability of violation for those clouds of 10%. Currently, we are go on all weather constraints. If there were a problem and we needed to delay for 24 hours, forecast remains virtually the same with scattered conditions up through the mid-levels, winds between 12 peaking to 20 knots out of the northwest, and an overall probability of 20% chance of violation. So just to reiterate, we are go on all constraints, looking for some mid-level clouds moving over the launch complex that are of thickness that is not a concern for triggered lightning. Thank you. This concludes the range weather briefing, unless there are any questions.
And good news from Launch Weather Officer Mike McAleenan. We're go on all constraints. There are no concerns. Winds are low, and the clouds are not predicted to be thick enough to cause a problem at the time of liftoff. He has increased his probability of launching to 90%, and we are at T-minus 55 minutes, 40 seconds, and counting. This is Falcon Launch Control.